Right, now I'll hand over to Graham Smith. We're going to press on, so I'll now hand over to Graham Smith. He's the Senior Development Officer here at Fenland, present agenda item number 6, FYR22 0967. It's a Fenland District Council application. So Graham, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this application relates to land east of the Elms in Chatteris. It's an outline application and it's to erect up to 80 dwellings. The applicant is Fenland Futures, which makes this application a Fenland District Council application. Just firstly, a quick alteration to the report. The total contributions in the report on section 10.13 on page 72 should have included the possible maximum total, which is a request for a total of £1,366,040. That will be subject to the number of houses because it's an outline application. However, the report continues in section 10.14. This figure cannot be sought given the council's current position on viability. We've also received a further letter from the fire services confirming their request for fire hydrants, and planning condition number 10 in the report deals with that issue. We also received a late letter from Mr. John Maxey, who drew attention to the question of whether the applicant should have provided a viability assessment. That letter is available in detail on the council's website. The applicants agree to provide 20% affordable housing and infrastructure contributions as detailed in the main report at £2,000 per dwelling. Mr. Maxey sought confirmation that this proposal would be consistently applied together with a position of 10% first homes and 0 infrastructure contributions on sites to the north of the A47. Officers have since given Mr. Maxey that confirmation, and following that confirmation, Mr. Maxey confirmed his objection had been satisfied and his request to speak has now been withdrawn. On to the presentation. This shows the aerial photograph and the location plan. You can see the main road, the A142, is it, to the east of the site, and the housing off of Green Park to the north, and the housing off the Elms to the west. Land to the south of the site, which is undeveloped, forms part of the wider BCP site, which we'll show as we come on to it. Just for assistance, this was the adopted BCP, and the site is in the north eastern corner of the plan, showing how it would link to the rest of the site. The BCP does include an intention for that site to be served from an access point of view from the south, and rather not from the Elms, which is the application that's in front of you. Thank you. This is the indicative plan that the applicants provided, which shows the zones for development and also how roads might be provided. You can also see the watercourse that crosses the site from north to south, and it includes potential SUDS attenuation features. It does show the access coming off of the Elms to the west there. Also shows potential emergency access, emergency services access off of Green Park, the centre of the north. Thank you. And a secondary indicative site showing how the open space and those SUDs would relate or could relate. But these plans are not for determination from the council tonight, because this is just the outline application. These would need to come forward as part of the details. Thank you. A more detailed location plan, just putting everything into position. Thank you. And site photographs. The top one is the actual access off of the Elms. So that's the location of the access. And then the other two sites show Farrier's Gate to the north and west, and the emergency access position from Green Park in the north. Again, the actual details of those would need to come forward as part of the reserve matters, but you need to know where those positions are. Thank you. More photos showing views across the site, most of them in a northerly direction. I think you can see the footbridge over the watercourse on the southern edge of the site. Thank you. So the main issues, the application site is within the East Chatteris strategic allocation in the adopted local plan, for which the broad concept plan has been produced and adopted. The proposal is to access the site from the Elms, which is contrary to the aspirations of the BCP. However, no applications come forward to develop the land immediately to the south of the site. There, however, remains some flexibility regarding final access for the wider BCP. Objectives highlight concerns regarding appropriateness of the council determining its own application and lack of comprehensive development, considering the application to be premature. However, the site was allocated in 2014. The significant issue, therefore, is whether bringing forward this site, accessible from the Elms, would result in significant harm. A key consideration, the local highway authority makes it clear they have no objection in highway terms. The proposal requires vehicular and pedestrian and cycleway links to the southern edge to facilitate connectivity to the remaining BCP site. So we have conditions attached, insisting that the reserve matters would provide that. Conditions also pinpoint the access locations and the provision of a leap for reserve matters provision. Indicative landscaping shows the site is capable of retaining worthwhile trees, hedges, and provisions of acceptable suds and drainage measures. Application proposes high quality homes, but we've attached a planning condition requiring details to be assessed against the National Design Guide to ensure that quality is provided. There are no objections from consultees. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval subject to receipt of an acceptable legal agreement and conditions as detailed in the main report. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. We have 3 sets of speakers on this application. First, I'd like to invite Councillor Ian Benny. He's a district councillor to make his presentation to committee. You have 5 minutes when you're seated and ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members, officers. I'm here to speak. This is in my ward, so I'm looking at this from a ward perspective. I am on the investment board as well, and this land also falls under my portfolio as assets for Fenland, so that's why I'm not taking any part in the voting today. All my life, I've been critical of politicians, national and local, who make popular decisions just to get re-elected, rather than practical and informed ones. With that in mind, it would have been easier for me to jump on the bandwagon and go for the minority option as ward councillor to refuse this application. But I truly believe this application has been well worked, is policy compliant, and the best compromise for all Chatteris residents. Also, it delivers housing Chatteris desperately needs. There has been no major house building in Chatteris, with the exception of Woomb Farm, since the early 1980s. The Chatteris East Strategic Allocation, or BCP, has been in place for 15 years and stood as the cornerstone of housing allocation for Chatteris in that time. But not one brick has been laid. Whilst on paper the policy looks good, the lack of willingness to agree by landowners, agents and developers have failed to pull a deal together to deliver. That is why the BCPs are being dismantled in the emerging local plan, and individual applications within a BCP are being accepted. As portfolio holder for FDC assets, I have seen other proposed schemes for this site. Another proposal was for the whole BCP area, showing 450 homes, with the land at the bottom of the Elms having all the social housing element for the whole BPC site in the form of flats on this land. Whilst this would not use the Elms for vehicular access, foot traffic from the flats most certainly would, and visitors to the flats could park in the Elms, causing traffic issues. I looked at treeways in Chatteris to show what could happen to a quiet cul-de-sac. I'm also on the investment board and said I could only support this scheme if it was a high quality development. I want nice, well-designed, well-built family homes with plenty of off-road parking that would bring as little disruption to the residents of the Elms as any scheme would. 2, 3, 4 and 5 bedroom, high quality, low density housing with policy compliant 20% affordable delivers enough affordable housing for the local need and no more. 15 rentals and 5 shared ownership, whilst it retains the good character of the Elms. From the FDC website, there have been 10 letters of objection, but only 6 of these are from residents. The remaining 4 are from local agents, and most of the objections, flooding, access, drainage, wildlife, etc., are addressed within the officer's report. Also, Fenland Future did a community engagement exercise pre-summer holidays last year. Over 150 homes in close proximity to the site were consulted. 16 replies were received, 6 were objections, the rest were either neutral or showed support. The requests from those responses asked for a mix of houses and bungalows, a mix of open space, and energy efficiency for the properties. All of these requests I will work to deliver from my place on the investment board if elected in the next election. This in contrast to the Wenny Road development that also lies within the BCP area and is within 300 metres from this site, has over 550 residents' comments, nearly all against that development. This shows the contrast of objections between the two sites, although in very close proximity to each other. As ward councillor, I was made aware 4 years ago that there are significant drainage issues within the Elms. Since the Farriers Gate development was built, and that's to the other side of the Elms, there is a surface water that runs into the Elms, causing severe flooding. A resident sent me a photograph of the gardens, highway and car park with significant standing water, enough to cover the tyre on the bottom of the car tyre. I took this to David Rowan, I hope David remembers this, head of planning at FDC, and asked what could we do to solve this problem. Build was his answer. Then the drainage scheme on the new part will resolve the flooding. Approving this development is the best way to solve the flooding issues affecting the residents of the Elms. It is only a matter of time, without this application being approved, someone's house in the Elms will flood. There has also been talk of an alternative access into the site. Fenland Future has a consultant look at bringing the access off the A142. Their conclusion was, access from the A142 is considered feasible. However, extensive works will be required at significant cost, which is likely to make the development unviable. Also, the land to deliver that is not in ownership of FDC. It would also mean anyone living on the proposed site would have to drive around the bypass back in the town just to buy a pint of milk. I've got one more paragraph. The lack of connectivity to the wider town and service would not be good for the residents living there. So in conclusion, this development is policy compliant. It delivers much needed housing to Chatteris, social and market value, has been fully consulted and agreed a solution with Holloway's for the access and comes with an officer recommendation to approve. I therefore ask the committee to support the application.
Yeah, I was very lenient with it, Councillor Benny. I did let you have 20 seconds over, but after that, Councillor Melton, Mr. Melton can have the extra 20 seconds if he wants it. You can have an extra 20 seconds if you want as an objector. Okay, so that makes it fair. But no. We're just having any questions now. I'll just make it clear to Mr. Melton that he can have an extra 20 seconds. So back on schedule. Questions? Right, thank you, Councillor French. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Benny, is it possible that another access point could be brought through the BCP?
Not really. The land that surrounds the Fenland known land at the bottom of the Elms, when Justin Wingfield was here, Justin tried to make contact with that company. I can't say who it is. And he did make company, but they never really came back. They were asked if they wanted to put the land in for the call for local sites, and they weren't. And on Monday, when I had my bi-weekly meeting with Mark Greenwood, who took over from Justin, I asked if there'd been any contact from that landowner, as to whether they wanted to bring this forward to development. Mark's been working here 14 months and he said he's never had any contact with them. So can only assume that that would, the answer to that would be no.
My second question is with regard to Cambridge County Council Highway Authority regarding the public right of way. And it does say this should be agreed prior to this application being determined. I'm not sure whether that's a question to you or a question to officers.
I would have thought it'd be a question to officers, really, Councillor French. Any more questions for Councillor Benny? Councillor Scolding, thank you.
Yes, just one. Do all the other town councillors agree to this?
Yeah, Councillor Benny can easily answer that.
Chatteris Town Council seems to be against this development. It says it's overdevelopment. It's not. It's low density compared to what it could be. Truthfully, I think Chatteris Town Council has got its nose a bit burnt with Save Winnie Meadow campaign. I think they're a bit scared about getting involved in anything like this. So I think that is why we've had a negative response from Chatteris Town Council.
Right, so I can't say anything. So just I shall ask the applicants, the agent, representative who's coming in after Councillor Melton, but I'm happy to see. No, but anyway, never mind. So whatever. So I'm really pleased that I can see 20% affordables and 5 shared airs. I'm really pleased about that. And I hope, I'm absolutely fairly certain that we shan't come back here again with a revision of that. But also I'm going to ask is, as I ask other applicants, agents, that we need a sweeper at all times, because what we don't want is mud, debris on the highway. I'm sure you've heard me say that several times to several other applicants, and I'll obviously ask you as a portfolio holder, will you give a cast iron guarantee that's the case? Because we do not want to be down there every 5 minutes.
That is fair enough. As far as I'm concerned, Councillor Connor, yes, we will do that. We've looked at this with Fenland Future. We want to be delivering, we want to be a gold star deliverer of homes within within Fenland Future. And we've got to keep the residents happy, and we need to keep the roads swept and tidy. I believe Adam, who is following on from me, who's the officer for this and for Fenland Future, if we ask him the same question, I'm sure he will give a guarantee to that, the same as I will.
I'm really pleased to hear that. Thank you very much. Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Councillor Benny, I'm just going back to your comments on the Chatteris Town Council, and I note that they don't object to the site per se, but they do strongly object to the entrance being on the Elms. When we went down there, it's not ideal. That is, there's a long way from being ideal, but I've just looked, your comments on that.
Yeah, it probably isn't ideal, Councillor Sutton. Fenland Future did have the consultancy firm do an access survey on the Elms. There were 3 areas looked at. One was the access through the Elms. Another one was through Green Park, but there was ownership of the land that allowed access into the site there, so that one was dismissed. And the only other access to bring that in would be from the bypass, and it's on a long sweeping curve to come round there. And to put slip roads in for in and out would be too costly. It would prohibit the development, and also it would make it not part of the town. You wouldn't be able to drive into it. And if you look at the pictures that were on the board in the Elms, when they built the Elms, they left that part of the road open to accept delivery. If not, they'd probably put a couple of houses to block the end off. That does happen. That hasn't happened here. And this will be the last bit of development that comes in here, because once that we've got the bypass going around the outside, there won't be any further development there. And as much as nobody ever wants development, we see this every week at planning committee. We upset somebody when we pass something. There is the drainage issues, which I did take to David. I don't know if David remembers when I came to see him about that. And the flooding at the bottom of the Elms is very serious. We've got 5-6 inches of standing water on the roads. And when I spoke to David, he said to me, the best way would be to build, and then the drainage scheme to solve the flooding issue at the bottom will be resolved. And as a local councillor, even, you know, as long as I'm elected, I will be pushing very hard to make sure that that is resolved within the scheme when the drainage scheme comes in on the reserve maps application.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor French.
Thank you. Having read this a bit further, mitigation, the provision of a welcome pack, travel pack for the first occupants of each dwelling is noted that such travel packs will include 4 weeks free bus travel, cycle discount vouchers, etc. Who's paying for this? I've never seen this before.
No, I haven't seen it before either, but that might be one for the officers. I don't think Councillor Benny will know that, will you?
I have no idea.
We'll spare you your blushes there then.
I dare say somewhere along the taxpayer is going to pick the bill up for that somewhere. If you ask Adam, who's going to follow me on, I'm sure he will have I think maybe a better understanding of that.
I think that's a good thing. Councillor Purser.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Question I asked earlier, in actual fact, on a different site, and it's often mentioned in this committee about the sequential test. They're saying that there might be a Chatteris Town Council actually objects to it for various different reasons. Is there any other sites that could be used rather than Chatteris for that similar sort of thing?
I will refer you to Councillor French's answer in the last one. We're looking at this application.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Davis, thank you.
Yeah, can we have your assurance that the access from the 141 was seriously looked at and costed, and because you said you've dismissed it because it would make the whole thing non-viable?
I've actually got a copy of the report in front of me that was prepared for Fenton Future Limited. It was JDS Consulting Engineers Limited. It's got all the plans and all of the options were looked at for that. And it does state very clearly in there in the conclusion, access from the A142 is considered feasible. However, extensive works will be required at significant cost, which is likely to make the development unviable.
I think that nicely clears that up. Anybody got any more questions for Councillor Benny before we let him go? No, thank you very much. Thank you. So now I'd like to invite Alan Melton, he's an objector, to make his presentation to committee. You again have got 5 minutes, and of course, as I suggested, you can have another 20 seconds if you so wish. Thank you. I do apologise for that, but you'll always be known as Councillor Melton, whether you are or you are not. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for giving me the time. First of all, I want to make it quite clear of why I'm objecting to this site. I'm not against the development of this land. I was here at a time when we promoted it as a wholesale development right the way up to the bypass. And it was always stated at the time and in successive plans that there would be no access to that land from St Martin's Road, the Elms or Green Park or anywhere else. It would be coming off the bypass with a roundabout near the cricket club, and it would be served from there. Wholesale development. Now I know that it's a job to bring all the developers together, the landowners, etc., etc. In my opinion, that's their problem. But I don't see why Fenton District Council should pick up the problem and make the problems worse. When you visited the site, I suppose you did last week, you probably went at a convenient time when there's not many cars parked along there. Had you had gone down there around the Elms and Birch Avenue at school time, or indeed first thing in the morning and also in the afternoon, you would see a completely different scenario. Councillor Benny is absolutely right. It is his ward. Before it's his ward, it was my ward several years ago. I live on that ward. I walk that ward every single day. I walk across those fields. I look at the dikes, the ditches, and the way that water is supposed to go away, and it doesn't. I look at the cars that are parked. I look at the access. And quite frankly, it is not acceptable. Can I remind you of something, Mr. Chairman? If I had more than 5 minutes and probably had an hour, I would play to you the scenario that we went through, or you went through, when you were discussing the development at Doddington. And this is very similar. You weren't here, but you made a statement. Access, the winding roads, the bends, the delivery, everything that was said in this council chamber during that debate. I could even quote some of the things that some of the councillors who are sitting around here now actually said about that access. It was also said by one councillor who's sitting here that the town doesn't want it, or the village doesn't want it, the community doesn't want it, and those nearby don't want it. That was said, okay? So therefore, what I'm saying to you, Chairman, to be consistent, you should consider this in the same way. Now, I know it's very difficult for members, been there, done that, the nature of the planning application and who the applicant is. Can I again make it quite clear? I am not against selling council assets. In fact, probably during my time, more assets were sold than at any time in the history of this council. But I always wish to see that the local community benefits from the sale of those assets. And in this case, it doesn't. All it's going to do is to aggravate a problem which is now on St Martin's Road, Birch Avenue and the Elms. It makes mention of East Park Street in here. That is the main egress and access into St Martin's Road. It is a terrible junction. Most people who leave St Martin's Road from the Elms or Birch Avenue actually cut up Church Lane to get out. Now that is a narrow road with hardly any footpath, but with cars parked along. That's where the Chatteris Town Council chamber is. Councillor Benny quite rightly mentioned the consultation. My view is the consultation didn't go far enough. The consultation was in the was in Green Park and adjoining areas. The consultation should have been with everybody in St Martin's Road, Birch Avenue and the Elms to get their opinion on it. To sum up, Chairman, I believe that this application is premature. It should still be considered as a whole item of land within the bypass as allocated. And my own view is, in view of the comments regarding the Wenny site, I won't call it the meadow, the Wenny site, if the developers can't come together and put a whole scheme together, a proper spine road, proper accesses, proper environmental and drainage contributions, then the whole lot should be taken out of the emerging local plan. And that's the only way to deal with it, Chairman, because if not, you'll be considering piecemeal development from now for the next 20 years. And all of it will be coming on St Martin's Road. And that's my concern, Chairman.
Yep, thank you very much. Members, any questions for Mr. Melton? Councillor Sutton, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Mr. Melton, welcome back to the chamber. You are missed. Councillor Blaney alluded to flooding, etc., etc. What is your take on the flooding around that issue? And you know, Councillor Benny alluded to the development actually helping the current problems, which is, you know, it's not something you would expect normally because that it's not associated with that. But if that was going to help those flooding issues, then that is a bonus, I would thought.
Mr. Chairman, through you, this morning again I walked to that site, and the problem is all the volume of water which comes from development from Green Park, the Elms, and indeed Farrier's Gate, that all goes into one point and it goes into one drainage ditch. There is a culvert under the bypass, and then there is another culvert. None of them have the capacity to take any further volume of water. I haven't brought photographs because I'm not as astute as Councillor Laws, but the fact of the matter is I have got photographs of it. The other side of that culvert, it just comes to a stop. It's a dead stop. And with the, and where the water does go before the culvert, it pools and it steps over. The other thing is, which doesn't show on those photographs, is when they built Farrier's Gate, they actually raised the site by a metre. And there is a brick wall, in engineering bricks, on the entrance to the Elms, which holds that development back. And in fact, you can see it more graphically because there is a set of steps and indeed a slope to climb up from the Elms into that development. Now, you don't need to be very bright to know that when water falls, it always goes downhill. If you build on this site, that will have to be raised because that and the adjoining playing field are always wet. You won't get through there most of the year unless you've got Wellingtons on. The problem you've got then is when you build that site up, along with Farrier's Gate, the people who live in the Elms actually are in a bowl. What you're actually doing is putting their houses in a bowl. And unless you've got extension engineering and pumping works, there is no way. And can I remind members, as I said, I was ward member. Councillor Benny wouldn't remember this, but when I was a member of Fenland District Council on my ward, I got a call one morning at 2 o'clock in the morning. That area was flooding, not with 4 or 5 inches of water, 2 or 3 feet. And I went into a lady who still lives down there now, and there was poo coming up her toilet and spilling out. There was another one who still lives there who had 2 young children at the time, and the same situation. Now, I remember walking those fields with Terry Poulter at 3 o'clock in the morning with a failing torch to identify the problem, and it was identified right out in the fens. And unless that's dealt with, what you're going to get is those houses flooded again, and those people who live in the Elms are in fear of that happening again because some of them are still there. In fact, most of them are still there. And I said at the time, as their ward member, that I would do everything to stop that happening again. I'm no longer the ward member. I'm retired. I've handed over to somebody far more competent than me and younger. But you know, I still feel that I have to stick up for those people who supported me all those years as my constituents.
Councillor Purser.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned in part of your presentation there that the junction coming off that road is, I can't remember the words you actually used, deadly or incredibly dangerous. Yeah. Would it actually possibly help if the outline part of the planning permission actually included things like a roundabout or traffic lights or something like in that situation?
Victoria Street, that would probably be impractical, and it would cost an absolute fortune, and that certainly would make any development totally unviable, and that certainly wouldn't leave any money left over for the schools and the transport, and if there's any left over for the local community, which there won't be, you know, so that is a solution, but it is impractical and it's very costly.
Do you want to carry on?
I'd like to come back on that if I may.
Sorry?
I'd like to come back on that if I may.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. Yeah.
I totally understand what you're saying there. It'd be too costly and you wouldn't be able to do this with it, you wouldn't be able to do that with it. But on the other side of the coin, on the side of the same coin there, it's also a matter of how much does a life cost?
I couldn't agree more, and that's why I'm making the case against it now, because quite frankly, that is a major route for footpaths and cars for access from the Cleveland School one way. And if you live where I live in St Martin's Road, you have got a constant stream of kids between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning coming by my house from those estates and also going back the other way. So, you know, it is a very dangerous exercise. I do not know, and I'll quote again, which was said at the Doddington debate, which is there if anybody wants to hear it. Somebody made the point that how on earth would you get building materials around there? A great big lorry with trusses on the back, you know, quarter cabins, you name it. I come from construction, and the stuff that's got to go down there, it is going to be an absolute nightmare. And yes, it won't be a sweeper that's required to keep it clean. It will be a major piece of machinery to keep it clean and to stop the aggravation that's going to go in those roads.
Right, thank you, Councillor Purser, for that. Thank you, Mr. Melton. Anybody questions for Mr. Melton before we let him go? No apparent rush for that. Thank you very much for that. No worries, thank you. Now I'd like to invite Adam Broadway on behalf of the applicant to make his presentation to the committee. You also have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Chairman, members, officers, thanks for the opportunity. I'm Adam Broadway, I represent Fenland Future. Just for clarity, Fenland Future is the wholly owned subsidiary of your council. It's been set up specifically to create revenue for the council. We are the applicant for this site, and as you can see in the report, I don't want to add anything to it. You have a clear recommendation, and you have a clear set of statutory consultees who are now not objecting to the scheme. We have worked very closely with the planning officer and the statutory consultees to ensure that this outline application meets planning policy and can be delivered. We've included, very importantly, the provision of affordable housing in line with your policy, and we're also offering up a section 106 capital contribution to meet some of the requirements for the other facilities in the town, and also to pick up the question that was asked about the transport travel plan that we will offer to the residents of the development. That will be costed in the development by FFL when we develop the site, if we get to that point. I appreciate there's been a lot of conversation previously with my colleague, Councillor Benny, and the objector, Mr. Milton. We're happy to answer any other questions.
Right, thank you for that. Question? Yeah, so just questions. Councillor French, thank you.
Thank you. It's quite disappointing to look at the lack of comment from highways. Normally highways have got either object or happy with it, but I'm intrigued about the transport assessment team confirm about this welcome travel pack. What is that all about? We've never, all the years I've been on this council, I've never heard of this. You know, bearing in mind, we don't have many buses. Is this just another directive coming from county council to get people out of the cars?
I think we all have a problem with transport. We had in the previous application the issue about bus services, etc. However, we have a climate change issue. We need to consider how we move about, and we need to address it. One of the new ideas that's being floated is to offer all new residents on developments travel options which are different to the car. It's an incentive to people to try and use their transport modes in a different way. This is used on a number of different developments across the country. It is new, but it will be funded by the developer and will hopefully try and reduce some of the traffic car travel use, which is often made by people with cars, and try and encourage them to make the switch to other sustainable transport modes.
May I come back?
Absolutely,
Yeah, I
please.
understand what you're saying. I witnessed a 2.5-hour meeting at County Council Highways yesterday, and that was what exactly they want to get people out of cars. They forget people living in this area need a car. They've closed Mill Road in Cambridge, which is absolutely bonkers, but that decision's been made. People are up in arms about it, and I'm sure the people in Chatteris who need to get from A to B to B to C will not be waiting for a bus because we haven't got any buses.
Absolutely right. In fact, Chatteris will have less buses than they've already got now. So I don't know how you can take away nil, but they seem to have done it. Councillor Davis, thank you.
Yeah, what will the proposals be for construction traffic? Because obviously all the roads around there are very narrow. There are cars parked quite legitimately on the road. And also, you know, we possibly could have a situation of construction traffic meeting head-on emergency vehicles. So I just wondered what your comments would be.
There's a condition in the conditions, and it will be an obligation on the reserved matters application to deal with that, as in all normal developments. So we take the point. We are not fixed on a particular route. It will be dealt with in the detail if we get to that point.
I understand that, and I've seen that obviously in the papers. I just wondered whether whether you had any view now that what might assist councillors in their decision.
I have a view, but that needs to be technically supported. There is view that you could come off the bypass, but that is extremely difficult because of the access point as it is, and the fact that that is a very busy road and it's on a major curve. So I won't make a comment on it. I just want to leave comfort to members to say that it is part of the detail that you come to when you come to a reserved matters application.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry to keep on about this. I've asked Councillor Benny. I do see in the conditions as a wheel wash. I would prefer a sweeper as well. If this application gets approved today, obviously to stop the debris on the road, and I'd like it from the day one when you have a digger going there for pre-commencement building. So have I got a goal? Can you give me a cast iron guarantee that will happen? Because that is a big concern of councillors around this table.
Fenland Future will be developing this site out with appropriate contractors. We have the ability then to put conditions on our contracting partners to ensure that we deliver this in the best and health and safety conscious way. So I take the point. We're happy to take it on board, but we will emphasise this is technically a council development, and we need to do everything absolutely perfectly.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Councillor Purser.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taking into consideration again, things have been said about, you know, the Durton Road and et cetera, and going to the main road there. How long is it likely to last, the actual development itself, the actual from, you know, going on the site to start with to the last one being completed? How long is it likely to last for?
Construction period, we would say, will probably be about 2.5 to 3 years. That's from the actual first start on site to actual handover and completion of the very last house. It depends. It's going to be a housing for sale scheme predominantly, and so we have to follow the market, and we have to have a sales plan which is basically reflects what the market will take. But I would say that will be roughly the type of timescale.
Councillor Sutton. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, you've heard from both Councillor Benny and Mr. Melton regarding the flooding issues, current flooding issues, and we're always told that a new development shouldn't bear the cost of something that's gone wrong years ago, and I can see the logic in that. But given this is a council run scheme, completely owned, I would expect that the council to go that extra measure to incorporate something within the new site which alleviates those problems that are existing. Can you give us any assurance that that would fit in with your plans going forward?
You will see in the report there's been quite extensive consultation with the relevant authorities on how we drain the site. And at one point when we were in the negotiations, the original proposal wasn't accepted. That has been amended and now actually conforms to what the authorities require in terms of drainage and holding the surface water. The surface water appears to be the big issue. So you have an existing drain going through this site, and we put in very large what we call sustainable urban drainage ponds, areas which will be dry in most of the time, but when there's a flooding issue, that they will hold the water. That is a technical detail which needs to be finalised when we come to the detailed application, but we've given confidence that we can address that on the scheme that we propose at the moment. That is the issue that we've been told from the technical support teams and the relevant authorities, and the scheme is addressing that with a clear condition in the report.
Do you want to come back on it, Councillor Sutton?
If I may, Chairman. Yeah,
Certainly.
I know as Councillor Mr. Melton said, that there's an issue with maybe with the culvert going under the 142. I know from experience and being on the 100 Always Beach IDB, there are 3 culverts going under the A47, 2 of which go uphill. And as Mr. Melton quite rightly pointed out, water only goes one way. Has there been any survey done yet, or maybe coming up as to whether that culvert going under 142 is, you know, fit for purpose and will take all this extra? There's no extra water, but you know, when it's built, obviously there's no soak away. You know, you're doing away with the drain. Is that so?
I refer to my previous point. We've consulted with the relevant agencies. They've given us their advice. We've amended the plan as it's currently proposed to accommodate with their further input. As part of a detailed application, there are going to be further conditions that we need to address, including a lot more technical reports. Those reports are actually fundamental to the next stage of the process. And as always, we would have to do that. It's in our interest. There's no point creating a problem which currently exists. We're trying to resolve some of those problems for the existing neighbourhood, and also our residents. So those reports come later in the process, but we've got a clear condition in the planning conditions offered at the moment, which we would meet.
Yeah, that's very refreshing to hear. I think everybody, I think that's what around the table. Anybody else before we let Mr. Broadway go? No burning desire. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, members, questions, clarifications to officers, please.
Thank you.
Councillor French.
Yeah, I'm just looking, I don't seem to have or haven't found it, anything from the drainage boards.
Please feel free to
Oh,
answer when you're ready.
the local flood is there, but maybe I've missed it.
Through you, Chair. Yes, sir. Before I came, I thought I'd check whether we received anything. I'd missed it. I checked through the system. There's nothing received from the drainage board.
It's quite disappointing.
Absolutely. Right, so any more questions to officers? No. No. Oh, sorry. Absolutely, please do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, through you. Just to clarify comments that Councillor Benny made, I do recall him showing me a photograph of a site on the Elms. I believe it was a car parking area that was underwater, and I did comment on that. However, I've not commented, I believe, actually on the application site itself.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. No, all finished with officers, right? So I'm asking members to debate the application now, please. Who'd like to start the debate off? I am looking at you, Councillor French. You usually do. Councillor Sutton, thank you. I'll let Councillor Sutton do it then. You're too late now.
I'm happy to kick it off, Chairman.
Councillor Sutton.
I have to say that I don't sit here overly comfortable having to make a decision on something that's in-house, if I'm speaking the truth. But that's what we have to do. So that's what we have to do. There has been comment about the BCP, and in other places, this kind of piecemeal has been refused. In Wisbech East was one I remember, and I think other places as well over the years. So we've got to be careful we don't appear to be favouring FDC's land, because that's contrary to what we've done before. But I guess, you know, this is going to go through whatever I say. I do struggle to compare, and we should be consistent. You know, when we refused the one in Wisbech East and others on the periphery of various BCPs, and now we're here with FDC's planning application in exactly the same position, and we potentially we're going to pass it. So it is something that doesn't sit quite comfortable with me, but I guess there isn't too much wrong with it, and so long as it is going to improve those flood issues that both Councillor Benny and Mr. Melton raised, and indeed it isn't going to raise, you know, the levels are not going to be raised like Councillor Melton fears, then I guess there isn't any policy other than, I suppose, not necessarily a change in policy, but a change in attitude to the BCPs. I guess just as like the last planning application, I guess there's not really too much we could nail to do anything other than pass it, other than the access, which I do have serious concerns about. But again, we don't have that technical backup from highways to stake the nail in it. You know, if we had a objection from highways, which we could pin our hat on, I would be more than happy to propose that we, you know, refuse it on that ground. But we're in that situation where we haven't got that backup, and nor would we get it. So I think, as much as it's going to hit me in the claw a bit to vote in favour of it, I guess that's where we're going to have to be.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sutton. I think you've hit a lot of the nails on the head, but I'm sure Councillor Mayor's got something to add to it. Do you want to speak? Thank you.
The only thing I want to add to it is I agree with everything that he said. The access is dreadful, and I am jolly sure that my voice might be one of the voices Mr. Melton was referring to on the Doddington application, because I thought that was awful, and I said so. But at the end of the day, you know, we've got no backup from highways, have we? But it's a terrible access. Surely, I mean, yes, we've been told the cost to come off the A141 is prohibitive, but no numbers been given. And should we be given numbers to look at? I don't know. I mean, what one person thinks is prohibitive, another person might think isn't. But access into that site from the Elms is dreadful. So I've got to say.
Yeah, you've made a really good point. I think it was fair to say we saw that on the coach, those who went on the coach, but we have to look at obviously, as you well know, we have to look at the application before us, and highways have got no objection. So morally, you're probably right, but in practice, we've got no reason, like Councillor Sutton rightfully says, to refuse this on highway issues whatsoever. So, any Councillor French, please.
Thank you. Again, this afternoon, I'm agreeing with Councillor Sutton. Most unusual.
Rather repetitive, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I did ask the question to Councillor Benny about the disappointment, lack of stuff from highway. You know, so I sit on the Highway and Transport at County Council. I'm just amazed. But going back to what Councillor Sutton said, that he felt uncomfortable making a decision on land that belongs to FDC. We've done it many, many times before. Definitely not on this scale, but we have done it before. But I think we need to take into consideration, we never had in the past years Fenland Future. And this is what it's all about, Fenland Future. So I think it is being done properly. I think if the access could be done, I've listened to Councillor Purser with regard to a roundabout. Can I just remind you that there is a very large development in March West, and there is a roundabout going in there. I know it's for 1,200 homes eventually, but it's in there. So I think you should still be looking, if possible, down the line to see if you can better this access.
Fair comment. Councillor Sutton?
Yeah, we can't turn it down on the Elms, but the only way we can turn it down, if members are not happy with that, the only way we can turn it down legitimately and according to the plan, and that is to say that we do not agree that the development should go ahead outside of the BCP. That is the only ground we've got. So if members wanted to do that, then I feel that that is quite a legitimate thing to do.
Oh, sorry, I'll let you come. No, sorry. I was just going to say, we can't go down that route. I don't, in my view, and I couldn't direct the committee to go down that route.
Chairman, we absolutely can go down that route because we absolutely have done before.
But, you know, well, I wouldn't want to encourage the committee to go down that route, but I'm
Can we
happy-
get the officers?
I'm just going that way with Nick.
Thank you. David's got more intimate knowledge with individual cases, but broadly speaking, there have been situations whereby we've refused planning permission where a incremental proposal on a BCP site has come forward, but in other instances, you know, we've approved. And the key to this is whether or not that proposed incremental development risks significantly stymieing the delivery of the bigger picture. And that's, you know, what we have to determine when dealing with this particular application. So it is fair to say that, you know, the means of access is different, but what's the harm of that access being different? You know, we've had 2 and a bit pages of response from the County Council's Highway Authority, so I think fair play to them. They have been thorough, and a transport assessment was undertaken, and also the Development Management Highways Officer has looked at the scheme. So yeah, I'm satisfied it has been looked at appropriately. Going back to the BCP, the only thing that is missing from the delivery of that wider scheme through the consideration of individual applications is that swathe of public open space, which is on the sort of southeastern quadrant of the site. But I think we have to be pragmatic about it, because despite valiant efforts by many, you know, there hasn't been able to be a deal struck between all the various landowners. And so we're looking at these individual cases as to whether or not they wipe their own face in terms of the delivery of the appropriate levels of open space, so on and so forth. So yes, this development is accessed via the Elms, but that doesn't prejudice access being provided off Wenny Road for the remainder of the development. So it's a case of no harm done. I'm not sure if David has anything more to say, or is that? Yeah, thank you.
Right, so I'm going to, we're still in debate. Councillor Davis, please.
This is a very difficult one, and I look round at the faces of the committee members, I look round at the faces of the people sitting in the public, and you can tell that people's hearts don't want it to go ahead. You know, we have every sympathy with the residents, but there's nothing, you know, the officers spend hours poring over writing these reports. They've gone into every detail, and there is, I cannot see any real material reason for turning this down. So it's just with sympathy really to the residents.
Yep. Anybody want to add to this debate? No? Right, debate's finished. Officers, would you like to sum up?
Thank you.
Please.
Yeah, through
Thank
Chairman, I think Nick's picked up sort of the issues around the BCP and also sort of some of the access issues. I think the important thing to remember in terms of, I think a couple of councillors have mentioned, would a roundabout off the 142 be feasible or not? How much would that cost? Is it really prohibitive? Ultimately, the committee's got to make a decision on the basis of the application that's in front of it. I think the only other issue I would potentially just pick up is whether it would give members some or greater comfort to add potentially an additional condition regarding details of land levels to be submitted at reserve matters stage. I think that picks up sort of some of the issues that Mr. Melton's raised, and I think some of the members have sort of reflected on in debate as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that. Other members, would they be happy with that? I'm looking around the table. Yeah, that's good then. So we can add that as another condition then. So obviously if it gets approved, we're jumping the gun a little bit really, aren't we? But that's great if that does. So any more questions to officers at all? Right, so I'm looking for a proposer now on the scheme. Yeah, Councillor Davis,
Yeah, go with officer's recommendation.
okay, to approve the application. Have I got a seconder on that? I'll do Councillor Scolding, just as a change. Nothing against you, Councillor French at all, but
Careful what you say.
it's chairman's discretion. Okay, so going back to normality, to go with officer recommend to approve this application, it's by councillor Davis, seconded by councillor Scolding. All those in favour of that proposal? Thanks. Any against? Or any abstentions? No, this application has been approved. Thank you, members. Again, I'll tell you what,